And look, this was meant to be a referendum on Anthony Albanese. I mean, the Liberals were ahead of the polls earlier this year. It should have been realistically a slam dunk. So the question has to be asked, why did the majority of Australians stick with a Prime Minister who's failed to deliver on every level? He's not likeable, and that was very, very clear when you talk to people on the ground. Why did Australians stick with the status quo, do you think?
Well, I think the short answer for that is the Liberals didn't provide a credible alternative. I mean, I think you're right in your analysis that Anthony Albanese and the Labor government are not considered to have done a good job over the past 3 years. The numbers reflect that. The fundamental metrics of people's standards of living, of prices, of energy prices, the cost of living more broadly reflect that. That was part of the challenge. For people to come to that realisation. But the second part of the challenge, in which we didn't fulfil, was to show them how life would be better under the Liberals, what we would do that would make their people's lives materially better, how we would make our people, wealthier, we would make our society more cohesive, we would make our nation stronger. We didn't provide a compelling enough alternative, and that's on us, and including on me.
I want to ask you about key coalition figures who were seemingly sidelined during the campaign. I mean, Barnaby Joyce is an obvious one. He's one of the best communicators in the coalition, and yet he was nowhere to be seen aside from on Sky News. Senator Price barely appeared. Andrew Hastie was pretty much absent. Ted O'Brien. I mean, energy is the big issue, and we hardly heard from Ted O'Brien at all. Julian Leeser had so much to say on community cohesion. We never heard from him. Why were so many of these very important coalition figures missing in action?
Well, I think a decision was taken to, prioritise campaign discipline and unity of messaging over having multiple voices with the risks that entails. Now, I think I would accept the verdict that strategy clearly did not work. And I think some of our most effective spokespeople and most effective and articulate policy developers, we saw less of them during the campaign than we would during the normal time of the news cycle, the parliamentary cycle. And I think that put a lot of pressure on Peter Dutton, and it put a lot of pressure on the leadership. And it meant we didn't have as many voices as we could have out there selling our message and promoting our policies.
Was there trouble behind the scenes, Dave Sharma? Was there disunity in the party when it came to the messages that needed to be sold to the public?
No, look, I don't think so. I mean, I'm not close enough to the organisation and running of the campaign to speak with authority about this, but I think in many respects, there was a lot of unity and focus, but I think at times that came at the cost of some of the internal policy debates we should have had in the wake of the 2022 loss, which we didn't have because, we prioritised unity and competitiveness. And I think now is the opportunity for us to go back and look almost at first principles at what we stand for and how do we translate those into a message and a set of policies and proposals for Australia.
Well, just on that then, so what happened to the nuclear debate? Why did the coalition run away from it?
Well, I don't think we did, but it's
But you barely
also
mentioned it. It was barely mentioned it was barely mentioned throughout the last 5 weeks.
Yeah, I would say that, look, I think Labor effectively turned that into a significant negative, that when people heard about nuclear, they heard about a cost that the Labor Party had, effectively plucked from a Labor advocacy group, the Smart Energy Council, and was used against us. Yes, I think we should have pushed back more against that and rebutted that more. But we also had to deal with, another version of the Mediscare campaign, any number of things. I mean, I think, look, all this stuff needs to be looked at. I accept your criticism. It's hard to allocate blame, though, to a single point of failure or a single point of policy in a loss that's this comprehensive.
I think you raise a really good point, and that is that the coalition never framed the argument. The argument was always framed. Even the coalition's policies were framed by the Labor Party and or unfriendly media, and I'd be curious to find out who's responsible for that, because if you can't frame yourself, let alone your own policies, then it's pretty difficult to win an election. Senator Sharma, we appreciate your time coming on the program tonight.
Thanks for having me.